You open your phone for 10 seconds, and something in your chest quietly drops. A friend just bought a house. A stranger just finished a marathon. Someone you went to school with is somehow already running a company, already tanned on some beach, already living the exact life you keep almost getting around to, and you will likely never meet. And quietly, you have lost. And now there is a small, cold voice doing math in the back of your skull. Where do you rank? What are you behind on? Who, exactly, is winning? You have been told this feeling is vanity, or insecurity, or a personal failure to feel secure in yourself. Comparison is the thief of joy, someone will tell you, as if joy could simply choose not to be stolen. For nearly the entire existence of your species, that same cold arithmetic ran on a completely different machine, smaller, slower, and this is the part almost no one tells you, built to be survivable. That status-counting voice in your head is not a modern glitch. It is one of the oldest instruments your brain owns, tuned across hundreds of thousands of years inside groups so small that everyone in them had a name, a face, a place they belonged, and it is now wired into a feed with no edges, running the same ancient math against a crowd of millions it was never built to measure. There was an old boundary that used to keep that voice from eating a person alive. Almost nobody has it anymore. By the end, you will know exactly what that boundary was and why losing it might be the real reason the scrolling never quite lets you rest. Start with the voice itself. Why does your mind even keep score like this? Why should another person's win cost you anything at all? A psychologist named Mark Leary spent years chasing that question, and he landed on something called sociometer theory. Your self-esteem, he argued, is not a report card on your worth as a human being. It is a gauge, a dial, quietly reading your standing inside the group around you, the same way a fuel gauge reads what's left in a tank. When the dial drops, you feel it as shame or envy, or that low hum of not enough. But the feeling was never really about you. It was your brain checking whether the tribe still wanted you close. That checking was not optional. For most of human history, the group was not a nice to have. It was the entire life support system. A person cut loose from the band lost the fire, the food sharing, the extra eyes watching for danger while they slept. Being pushed toward the bottom of the group's regard was not an emotional bruise. It was an early warning that exile and likely death might be next. There was no solo survival plan waiting outside the group, no apartment to move into, no other town to try. There was only the band or the cold, open dark beyond it.
Of course, that dial is sensitive. It was built to save your life. But here is where the story gets stranger and where the true shape of the problem starts to show. Because that dial was never built to read a crowd. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent decades studying primate brains and human social groups, and he arrived at a now famous number, something close to 150. That is roughly the largest number of relationships a human mind seems built to track with any real depth. The number of people who could plausibly know your name, your reputation, your place. A tight, local, knowable village. Not a country, not a platform, a village. Past that number, researchers studying the same limit have found, other people stop registering to your brain as full individuals at all. They blur into category, into type, into strangers wearing faces. Picture that village now. Picture your ancestors, 30 or 40 people moving together across an open plain at dusk, fires being built low against the wind. In a group that size, status was not one thing. It was many small things spread across many small people. One young hunter could never outrun the fastest tracker in the group, and everyone knew it, and it barely mattered, because that same hunter was the best in the whole band at reading the shape of clouds before a storm, or at telling a story so well that children stopped fighting just to listen. Someone else, maybe an older woman, held a kind of status no one questioned, because she alone remembered which roots were food and which ones would kill you by morning. There was almost always a ledge somewhere for a person to stand on and matter. The math of worth was local, and it was generous, because it had to fit inside 40 faces you would see again tomorrow. Now here is the twist almost nobody expects. You would assume status seeking, once it existed at all, would spiral upward without limit, the way it seems to now, each person straining to look richer or stronger than the last. Foraging bands did the opposite. The anthropologist Christopher Bowen studied dozens of these societies and found something he called a reverse dominance hierarchy. When someone got too boastful, too greedy, too eager to lord their skill over everyone else, the group didn't admire them,
It moved against them. Gossip turned. Jokes got sharper. The anthropologist Richard Lee, living among the Juhuansi of the Kalahari, documented a version of this so consistent it had a name: insulting the meat. A hunter would return with a large, hard-won kill, and instead of praise, the band would greet him with sighs and complaints, telling him the animal was scrawny, barely worth the trouble of carrying home. It was not cruelty. It was maintenance. It was the whole group leaning on the one lever most likely to keep a skilled man ordinary. Standing out too far, in either direction, was corrected hard by the people around you.
Even meat from a big kill was often shared out by someone other than the hunter who caught it, precisely so no single person could turn a good day into a permanent throne. Your ancestors were not chasing status upward without end. They were holding it flat, on purpose, because a band that let one ego grow too large was a band that could fracture and die. That is the boundary you lost. Not humility as a virtue you were taught. A hard, structural ceiling, built into a village too small to let anyone float too far above or sink too far below the people who actually knew them. Now look at the feed in your hand. It did not just add more people to compare yourself to. It quietly deleted the ceiling. There is no gossip network gently deflating the person with the perfect kitchen, the perfect body, the perfect vacation photo, because you will probably never meet them, and they will never feel the group correct them, because your outrage and their audience are two different rooms. You are still running Leary's ancient gauge, still checking your place the way your ancestors' bodies demanded. But instead of 40 knowable faces you might outstory or outtrack tomorrow, the gauge is being fed a curated highlight reel from millions of strangers, each one showing you their single best day, forever, on a loop that never has to answer to your judgment the way you have to answer to no one's. Of course the dial reads low. It is being asked to measure a village of a size no human brain was ever built to hold. Count the likes if you want proof. Count the follower numbers, the view counts, the tiny public scoreboard sitting under everything you post. None of that existed for your ancestors, and yet the urge to check it feels older than the phone itself, because it is. You are not addicted to a notification. You are answering an alarm that has rung inside your species since long before there were villages small enough for it to make sense. So if that ache behind your ribs when you close the app feels disproportionate, understand this. It is not proportionate to the 2 seconds you spent scrolling. It is proportionate to hundreds of thousands of years spent needing to know, with real consequences, exactly where you stood among the people who could see you. The instrument is not broken. It is simply plugged into a signal 1,000 times larger than anything it was calibrated for, with none of the old corrections still in place to level the reading back out. There is nothing shameful in that ache. It is the oldest, most functional part of you, doing exactly the job it was built for, in a world that stopped giving it a village-sized room to do that job in. You cannot uninvent the feed, but you can, quietly, rebuild the ceiling. You can choose, on purpose, whose opinion actually gets to move your gauge, and shrink that circle back down towards something closer to 40 faces than 40 million. You can let the rest scroll past as noise, not verdict.
So the next time you open your phone for 10 seconds and feel that drop in your chest, remember what that drop really is. Not proof that you are behind, just an ancient village-sized gauge doing its honest best in a world grown far too large for it to read alone.